Alrighty, everyone. It is Monday, May 5th, 2025. I am Michael Winkler, and this is the Mike Wink Show. So, we're going to start today talking about Israel-Palestine a bit. Let's start it off fun. Missile fired by Yemen's Houthis lands near Israel's main airport. I have been to this airport a few different times. A missile fired by Yemen's Houthi rebels towards Israel on Sunday landed near the country's main international airport, causing panic among passengers and drawing threats of retaliation against the group and Iran. Yemen's Iran-aligned Houthis claimed responsibility for the missile strike that struck near Ben Gurion Airport, the latest in a string of attacks, saying they are acting in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to retaliate. Attacks by Houthis emanate from Iran. Israel will respond to the Houthi attack against our main airport and, at a time and place of our choosing, to their Iranian terror masters, Netanyahu said on, I refuse to call it X, Twitter. In a separate video issued by his office, Netanyahu said, "We will do what we need to. We will do what we need to do to take care of our security, to respond effectively, and to give Iran due warning that this cannot continue." Houthis said in a statement later on Sunday that they would impose a comprehensive aerial blockade on Israel by repeatedly targeting its airports in response to Israel expanding its aggressive operation in Gaza. Most attacks from Yemen have been intercepted by Israel's missile defense systems, though a drone strike hit Tel Aviv last year. Sunday's missile was the only one of a series launched since March that was not intercepted. Later on Sunday, the Israeli military concluded an assessment and cited a technical issue with the interceptor launched towards the missile. Initial findings reveal no malfunction in the detection procedure, interception systems, or home front command alert mechanisms, the Army added in a statement. A Reuters reporter at the airport heard sirens and saw passengers running towards safe rooms. Several people posted videos showing a plume of black smoke visible behind parked aircraft and airport buildings. Pictures showed a nearby road scattered with dust and debris. And the Israeli ambulance service said 8 people were taken to hospital for mild to moderate injuries. This missile strike only caused mild to moderate injuries. That's kind of crazy. An Israeli police commander, Yair Hetzrani, showed reporters a crater caused by the impact of the missile, which airport authorities said landed beside a road near Terminal 3 parking lot. The airport lies near the major city of Tel Aviv. You can see the scene right behind us here, a hole that opened up with a diameter of 10 meters and also tens of meters deep, Hetzrani said, adding that there was no significant damage. Claiming responsibility, Houthi military spokesperson Yahya Saree said Israel's main airport was no longer safe for air travel. The Israel airport's authorities said normal operations had resumed after reports of air traffic being halted and access routes to the airport being blocked. However, a string of airports, including Lufthansa, Delta, ITA Airways, and Air France, said they had canceled flights to and from Tel Aviv, some of which had been scheduled for Monday or Tuesday. So I guess a byproduct of this whole conflict since October 7th is flights in and out of Israel have gotten quite expensive because of the security concerns. And I would imagine, as a response to this, a missile landing basically in the airport, that it's only going to get even more expensive. Sunday's strike came as Israeli ministers were reported to be close to signing off on plans to expand the military operation in Gaza, which resumed in March following a 2-month truce, prompting the Houthis to hit Israel with more missiles. Efforts to revive the ceasefire have faltered, and U.S. President Donald Trump in March ordered large-scale strikes against the Houthis to reduce their capabilities and deter them from targeting commercial shipping in the Red Sea. The strikes have killed hundreds of people in Yemen. The U.S. military continues its operation against the Houthis, which has included over 1,000 strikes against these terrorists, and we will continue to coordinate with the Israeli government through diplomatic channels, U.S. National Security Council spokesperson James Hewitt said in an email to Reuters. The Trump administration remains committed to ending the Houthis' capability to hijack freedom from navigation in the Red Sea. He did not directly address the airport incident. The Houthis, who control swaths of Yemen, began targeting Israel and Red Sea shipping in late 2023 during the early days of the war between Hamas and Israel in the Gaza Strip. The war was triggered by Hamas-led attacks on southern Israel in October 7th, 2023, in which 1,200 people were killed and 250 were taken hostage. Israel's offensive in Gaza has killed more than 52,000 Palestinians and destroyed much of the enclave. So this is very noteworthy because I actually saw the next bit of news that we're going to cover, which is Netanyahu's government's plan to fully annex Gaza. Um, I guess maybe they must have known that these talks were going on because my understanding is that this specific strike at the airport came before the deal was actually like the decision was fully made to annex Gaza. And this is a pretty big deal for Israel because Israel really only has it has one international airport, right? If you want to fly into Israel, you're going to fly into Ben Gurion in Tel Aviv. There's nowhere else really to fly. I don't even know if maybe there's an airport in the south by a lot, but like I don't think there are. I would speculate that the major airlines only fly into Israel into Tel Aviv, and that if you want to do another flight in Israel, it's going to be a smaller local one. And so this is super significant. Any they need to be extremely protective of that airport because if they were to manage to if the Houthis were to manage to completely destroy the airport, it would really cripple um, Israel in like a really significant manner, but it would also um really isolate them and really like it would be a that would be a humongous deal if they took out the airport. So I think they're especially protective over Ben Gurion Airport because it is their lifeline to the rest of the world pretty much. All right, so let's hop into the second part of this story, which is Israel's plans. So Netanyahu vows powerful Israeli operation in Gaza as ministers okay plan to capture the whole enclave. So this was released just today. I'm pretty sure. Israel's security cabinet has unanimously approved plan to seize all of the Gaza Strip in what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said would be an intensive military operation aimed at defeating Hamas. Palestinian civilians will be moved during the powerful new operation in Gaza, Netanyahu said in a video posted on social media, adding that his forces would not launch raids inside the enclave and then retreat. Wait, a video. Okay. The Security Cabinet took the decision on the recommendation of Israeli Minister Chief Ayal Zamir, Netanyahu said. Israel, before the last ceasefire went into effect, had already taken full control of a third of Gaza. The besieged enclave has been under the longest blockade of humanitarian aid since the war began in 2013, as Israel's total ban on the entry of all goods, including food, fuel, and medical supplies, enters its third month. Wow, I didn't even hold on. Let's pause here really quick. As a result, the risk of famine hangs over Gaza's population, prompting alarm even among some of Israel's closest allies. Let's take a look at this really quick because I don't know if I. Israel faces International Court of Justice over Gaza aid blockade. When was this released? April 28th. So this was just a week ago. Israel will face accusations of breaking international law by refusing to let aid into the Gaza Strip when dozens of nations present arguments at the International Court of Justice during a week of hearings starting in The Hague on Monday. Since March 2nd, Israel completely cut off all supplies to the 2.3 million residents of the Gaza Strip, and food stockpiled during a ceasefire at the start of the year has all but run out. In December, the UN's top court was tasked to form an advisory opinion on Israel's obligations to facilitate aid to Palestinians that is delivered by states and international groups, including the United Nations. Israel has said it would not allow the entry of goods and supplies into Gaza until Palestinian militant group Hamas releases all remaining hostages. Wow, okay, so I didn't know that they did this. Germany, France, and Britain last week called on Israel to adhere to international law by allowing the unhindered passage of humanitarian aid into Gaza after Israel reiterated that no aid would be allowed to enter Gaza in order to pressure Hamas. U.S. President Donald Trump on Friday said he had pushed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to allow food and medicine into the besieged Palestinian territory. Israel has repeatedly accused Hamas of hijacking humanitarian aid that was allowed into Gaza. Hamas has denied the allegations and has blamed Israel for shortages. The resolution adopted in December by 137 of the 193 nations in the UN General Assembly called on Israel to comply with its obligations towards the Palestinian population as it expressed grave concern about the dire humanitarian situation. Israel, the United States, and 10 other countries voted against the resolution, while 22 countries abstained. Representatives for the Palestinian territories will be among the first to address the court in Hague on Monday. Israel is not among the roughly 40 nations that will speak during the 5 days of hearings scheduled through Friday. The United States will state its opinion on Wednesday. Advisory opinions of the ICJ, also known as the World Court, carry legal and political weight, although they are not binding and the court has no enforcement powers. So this is just a big finger wagging operation. This means nothing. The UN views Gaza and the West Bank as Israeli occupied territory. International humanitarian law requires an occupying force to facilitate relief programs for people in need and ensure food, medical care, hygiene, and public health standards. After the hearings, the World Court will likely take several months to form its opinion. This completely makes sense to me. So it seems bananas to me that they would completely cut off all forms of aid from what it says cut off cuts off medical supplies, food. That seems crazy to me. And to assert that they assert that after Israel reiterated that no aid would be allowed to enter Gaza in order to pressure Hamas. Well, okay, so Hamas does have a track record of stealing some percentage of these humanitarian aid shipments that go into Gaza. They do have a track record of stealing some percentage of them, but not literally all of it. As my understanding is that a majority of that aid, over 50%, still makes its way to the people in need. I don't know what they would expect to happen if they take away all aid. Like what they're clearly trying. This screams to me that they're trying to make Gaza completely uninhabitable. And that seems entirely consistent with their statements earlier that they want to basically kick everybody out and completely annex Gaza. Um, you make Gaza completely uninhabitable by removing all aid, all food, destroying all the buildings, and then you're gonna say we're gonna do a special operation. We're gonna remove you all. This seems like I would not be surprised if they're doing this as a way to ease their way into kicking all the Palestinians out and claiming Gaza. Make it uninhabitable, destroy everything, say you're going to temporarily remove them for like some special military incursion, and then when that special military incursion ends, just don't bring them back, or just basically never have that special military incursion end very conveniently, and then it just goes on indefinitely, and then they're indefinitely removed from the area. I feel like there's a good possibility one of these will play out. The United Nations on Sunday rejected an Israeli proposal for aid distribution, describing it as Israeli hubs under conditions set by the Israeli military. It added that the plan was dangerous and appeared to reinforce control over life-sustaining items as a pressure tactic, and would mean that large parts of Gaza, including the less mobile and most vulnerable people, would continue to go without supplies. It's very clear. I can't believe that they would even pretend to try and assert that this is a way to pressure Hamas, right? No, this is a way to pressure. This is a way to pressure the Palestinian people without a question. Which, in my understanding, is explicitly illegal, and that Israel has at least tried to appear that they're not doing that. They've at least tried to pretend like they're not um, trying to apply pressure to the Palestinian people at large through restricting food or destroying houses or making the place generally uninhabitable. It seems pretty clear to me that they're targeting the population at large by doing this. I mean, what would be cutting off literally all? There are ways that you could set up special like humanitarian aid channels to ensure that Hamas can't have any access to it at all. And IDF has almost full control over Gaza at this point. They could more than do this. They're not, and to me that shows that they're trying to pressure the population at large. They're not trying to specifically target Hamas. They're using the targeting Hamas as like a as a or as a distraction, as a guise. But a senior Israeli security official said in a statement Monday that the humanitarian blockade will continue, and only later, after the operation phase begins and a large scale civilian evacuation to the south is completed, will a humanitarian plan be implemented. They added that, unlike in the past, the military will remain in every area it secures to prevent the return of terror. So, the Israeli army has begun calling up tens of thousands of reserve soldiers to intensify and expand its fight against Hamas in an attempt to get the militant group to return hostages still being held since October 7th, 2023 terror attack. They are still trying to pretend like this is about the hostages. The Netanyahu government has said multiple times, like very consistently, that if they get all the hostages back, they aren't just going to leave Gaza. They aren't just going to stop. I have a feeling that their plans and the way that they're going about their way that they're going about this would not change in any fundamental way if all the hostages were to be returned right now, or if day one of the incursion they got all the hostages back. I don't think it would fundamentally change how they would do it, what they would be doing. They'd still say, "Oh, we're still going after Hamas. We still have to get Hamas." They would move the goalpost. Now they're pretending like it's about getting the hostages. When they got all the hostages, or that's no longer an option, then they'll move the goalpost to getting rid of all of Hamas. We are increasing the pressure with the aim of returning our men and defeating Hamas. I feel like defeating Hamas is like that's also just like an unrealistic, undoable goal, or it's just a fake goal. It's a way to distract from their real goals, because like it's almost like the idea of defeating ISIS. Like you're never gonna. It's an ideology. It's a mindset. You're never gonna be able to completely eliminate every single ISIS member, or everybody that purports to anybody that subscribes to ISIS viewpoints or whatever and lives in these regions. It's impossible to root them all out. It would be the exact same with Hamas. It would be impossible to root out every single Hamas member. That is unrealistic. And so if that is their standard, if they're basically saying we're just going to continue to go buck wild until we get all of Hamas, which is impossible, that's a goal. That is a goalpost that is on the other side of the universe, then this will never end. And to me, that screams that this is all cynical, that it's all there's really some other nefarious reason going on here. And I think something that is at least worth discussing and mentioning is their interest, not only parts of the Israeli government and ruling class, but also parts of the American ruling class have an interest in the real estate in Gaza. Um, my understanding, like I don't think it's like the most desirable piece of real estate in the entire world. I'm not going to pretend like that is, but like Trump's whole he wants to turn it into the Riviera of the Middle East or whatever. Like they're there has been a consistent talking over the last few years. You see them talk about real estate potential in Gaza, when they're talking about the conflict sometimes. Like, this is not a crazy concept that there are some nefarious, cynical forces at play here that really just want the land and don't really care about the people or anything else, any hurdle on their way towards getting that land. I think that is I don't know if that's the main driving force behind all of this, but I think it's worth mentioning, and it's got to play some factor in here. However, some reservists have indicated they will refuse to serve in a war they increasingly view as politically motivated, and at a commi- Knesset committee meeting on Monday, Ein Inav Zawu, whose son Matan is being held hostage, called on soldiers not to report for reserve duty for moral and ethical reasons. More than 51,000 people have been killed in Gaza since Israel launched its offensive, including thousands of women and children, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. The war has also decimated Gaza's medical facilities and infrastructure and driven most of its population from their homes, often several times. The United States Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, recently warned that nearly 500,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been newly displaced. Meanwhile, the families of the 59 remaining hostages under Hamas's captivity issued a red alert Monday over the impending expansion in Gaza. The expansion of military operations puts every hostage at grave risk, the hostages' families' forum headquarters said in a statement, adding, "It also threatens the lives of our soldiers and deepens the toll on countless Israeli families already carrying the burden of this war." Some 1,200 people were killed during Hamas's terrorist attack in southern Israel, while around 250 taken hostage, according to Israeli counts. marking a major escalation in the decades-long conflict. Israel resumed launching airstrikes in Gaza after a fragile 8-week truce between Israel and Hamas collapsed on March 18th, just more than 2 weeks after the first phase of the three-part ceasefire deal came to an end. Negotiations on the second phase of the deal, meant to establish a permanent end to the fighting, have since stalled. The ceasefire. Oh, who would have guessed that the performative, immediate ceasefire that happened when Trump came into office wouldn't have lasted? Who would have guessed? Oh my God. The ceasefire and hostage release talks could resume before a planned visit by President Donald Trump to the region next week. Israeli Minister Ze'ev Elkin told the public broadcaster Khan on Monday. There is still a window of opportunity until President Trump concludes his visit to the Middle East. If Hamas understands, we are serious, Elkin said. Trump said last month that he and Netanyahu were on the same side of every issue in a post on Truth Social shortly after the two leaders spoke over the phone. In February, my understanding is that Trump, has some weird affection for these pseudo-authoritarian figures, and that Netanyahu is the perfect model for that. So it doesn't surprise me that Netanyahu is like some weird kryptonite to Trump, and that he just is in lockstep. But not only is Trump sort of he goes with the wind, he says lots of contradictory things, but I think he's especially susceptible. When he has a conversation with Netanyahu or something, he's going to come out agreeing with everything he says. In February, Trump announced that the U.S. would seek ownership of the Gaza Strip to develop it into the Riviera of the Middle East, after saying Palestinians have no choice but to leave their homes there. He reiterated those plans after a meeting with Netanyahu at the White House in April, saying that the Gaza Strip was an incredible piece of important real estate, and that U.S. control and ownership of the territory would be a good thing. Yeah, so he you have when you're talking about all of this, you have to bring up these cynical, uh, nefarious forces behind the scenes, right? This is not just a simple conflict between the Palestinians who feel they're oppressed and are supporting uh, a terrorist organization, Hamas, and then you have the Israelis who feel like they're being attacked by all sides, and that they really need to secure this area, and that Gaza is a huge security concern in the future. All of that is true to some degree, but then another element that is equally, if not bigger than all of this, is the cynical reasoning of we just want that land, or we think we have a biblical right to the land, and that Palestinians have no right here, and that all the Arabs should be gone, and this should be a land for only the Jews. There are these cynical, bad reasons in play, and people have to address those. They have to be talked about. If you're going to have a full-throated discussion about Israel Palestine, you have to address these. And it's pretty bad, right? I can only imagine from an Israeli security perspective, I can think of no faster way to create an entire generation of martyrs willing to sacrifice themselves and commit terror attacks on Israel than to commit an ethnic cleansing by kicking literally all of them out of Gaza and then claiming it and then developing it for first world interests. Like I can think of no faster way to create a scenario in which you're going to have a series of big terrorist attacks, because these people have been in 100 years of victimhood, right? Their great great grandpas were kicked off their land or had the land bought from under them or whatever happened, and they have been 100 years deep in this mindset, generations and generations, and then you kick them out, and then you do another injustice against them. You kick them completely out of the land that they were supposed to have, and then you develop it in a first world way. This, I can't think of a faster way to. This all seems so counterintuitive to Israeli security. This just seems such a short-sighted way of addressing legitimate security concerns within Israel. If your goal is to create a long-term, more safer region and an environment for Israel to thrive in, I think this is the exact opposite way you need to go about doing this. I think since October 7th, I would have said prior to October 7th that some sort of pseudo one state solution is probably the best option, and that a two state, I don't know if it's totally viable. I would have maybe been open to being convinced that a two state solution was viable prior to October 7th. But post October 7th, I don't think a two-state solution is possible at all. What do you you've completely destroyed Gaza. So first off, they barely even have a state left to give them. So I don't think a two-state solution would make any sense. Plus, like you you have to have high level of security over the people remaining in Gaza at this point because of the whole martyrdom thing I mentioned, right? You're going to have a whole generation of people that are feeling like martyrs and are ready to sacrifice themselves. So I think because of October 7th, we're kind of horseshoed our way back to a pseudo one state solution to being the only way to do this, right? I and it's gonna take a different form than it used to be. Prior to October 7th, I would have said maybe a one-state solution in which Israel really tries to, like, incorporate the Palestinian identity as part of the state, and, like, maybe even go as far as to rename the country or change the flag or do something huge and symbolic to really, like, recognize, like, "Guys, we're trying to put a new foot forward in this relationship, and we're gonna try and mend the harm, mend the breaks." I don't think that explicit bridge building form of one state solution would work at this point. I think there obviously is forms of bridge building and tension reducing that needs to be done, but I think it would take a very different form now. I think, unfortunately, I think the most likely best way for them to handle this at this point, I could be wrong about this, would be to sort of annex it in a similar way they have the West Bank, and then basically govern it in a similar way that they have the West Bank. Try do as better as they can, and then hopefully not do the settlements, and hopefully take a new foot forward in trying to help them rebuild their giant uh, land of their giant Gaza's just a big rubble pit at this point. So the Israelis have the opportunity to come in and say, "Look, we're going to be the military police. We're gonna govern this area. Hamas doesn't isn't allowed to do this. Isn't allowed to be around anymore. But we're gonna help y'all rebuild. We're gonna help you hopefully work towards a path where maybe we can get to a one state solution type of thing. I think that's the most realistic, safest, best long term solution for Gaza at this point. And then maybe in the future, after they've developed it enough, after they've built enough bridges, maybe then they can start taking down fences or start, reducing checkpoints and roadblocks and really try and incorporate Gaza into the greater part of Israel. Um, I feel like that's the only option at this point, really, in a sort of a horseshoe roundabout way. Okay, let's move on to something more fun and less serious, all right? Trump's Hollywood tariff announcement is met with confusion and fear. So Trump announced like yesterday or the day before randomly out of nowhere that he wants to start implementing a 100% tariff on all non-US made movies, which is it was so weird. Why? Like, I'm hoping that this article lays out some of the reasoning why. I can't think of a reason why. Are we really getting is there a I can't think of any competition-based reasoning for this, and that's the whole idea behind tariffs, right? The steelman argument for tariffs typically is to increase our competitive viability in the world market. But we already make all the movies, basically. Like, what? I don't really see international filmmakers and film studios and whatnot like taking a larger and larger share of the overall movie market. I don't see that happening. Maybe I'm wrong, but let's just see what this article says. President Donald Trump's Sunday night proposal to impose tariffs on movies made outside the U.S. has been met with a mix of confusion and fear by the entertainment industry. And by noon Monday, White House officials clarified that no final decisions had been made and that it was exploring all options. Okay, so he just floated this idea. They haven't actually done it. Trump's initial proposal, posted to Truth Social, called for tariffs on any and all movies coming into our country that are produced in foreign lands, citing what he said was the harmful impact of incentives being offered by other countries. We want movies made in America again, Trump wrote. But in a note to clients, analysts with Morgan Stanley called the idea ill-defined, noting 100% duties on some or all of the costs of Hollywood production would lead to fewer films, more expensive films, and lower earnings for all in the business. This completely makes sense to me. The US government is basically saying, guys, we're going to have to take a 50% cut of everything you do movie-wise outside of the US. Of course, yeah, that's going to be humongously oppressive to the movie industry. The reality is that for any given film, there can be writing, production, editing, post production, visual effects, all done in different countries, they wrote. The analysts noted Trump's proposal failed to mention whether the tariffs would also apply to TV productions, what aspect of a production would be tariffed, and how it would be charged, and whether the tariffs could be applied retroactively. The tariffs would hit as Hollywood continues to navigate one of the most difficult periods in its history as social media, changing tastes and habits among viewers, the dawn of artificial intelligence, and the fallout from the writers' strike have rattled the industry and crippled box office returns. That okay, to say those are all the reasons why box office returns have are crippled is silly. Okay, the obvious elephant in the room that they aren't mentioning there is the streaming services. Who goes to the movie theaters anymore? Nobody. Like, come on. Last year's box office totaled just 8.75 billion, a 3% decline from 2023 and well off the $11 billion pre-pandemic average. Wow, so 11 billion pre-pandemic average. So that means let's round up and say they're at 9 billion. That means that they're down like almost 20%. That's humongous. I didn't know the movie industry took almost over around a 20% hit since COVID. That sounds about right, but that's pretty big. That's very noteworthy. It is true that Hollywood has increasingly opted to take production overseas, with Canada, New Zealand, and especially the UK seeking some of the biggest jumps in spending and investment. Last year's biggest live action hits, Deadpool and Wolverine, Wicked, and Dune Part 2, were filmed in studios outside the US. Yet, unlike most sectors Trump has targeted for tariffs, the U.S. entertainment industry has a large trade surplus with the rest of the world, given continued foreign interest in American titles. Yeah, I don't see that changing anytime soon, right? I mean, maybe I can see a trend graph that shows some trends over the last couple of decades, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but like, I don't really see there being Hollywood being overthrown as the like king of movies and media production. I don't see that happening anytime soon, anytime within the next couple decades, right? I feel like Hollywood's stranglehold on movies and media and whatnot is almost permanent at this point. It'd be pretty. It would require a pretty outlandish set of scenarios for Hollywood to be dethroned as the king of movies and whatnot in the world. Multiple Hollywood representatives declined to speak about Trump's proposal or did not respond to requests for comment. The financial impact, meanwhile, was already being felt. In Monday trading, shares of most entertainment giants like Netflix, Paramount, and Warner Bros. Discovery declined. The proposal also comes as Trump has appointed Mel Gibson, Sylvester Stallone, and John Voight as special ambassadors to bring lost business back. Notably, all three men have supported Trump and espoused conservative-leaning views. Wait, really? No idea he did that. Hold on, I didn't see that. That's so he 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 picks the most insane people. What? He picked like three of the most insane Hollywood actors to be ambassadors? What? That's insane. President-elect Donald Trump is hoping to make Hollywood stronger than ever before by naming Sylvester Stallone, Mel Gibson, and John Voight as special ambassadors whose goal will be to bring back business lost to foreign countries. W- Yeah, they're going to be real effective at that, I'm sure. It is my honor to announce John Voight, Mel Gibson, and Sylvester Stallone to be special ambassadors to a great but very troubled place, Hollywood, California. Wow. Trump imagine if a Democrat shit talked the conservative states and conservative cities like many of the conservatives and Trump do about like California and some of the more liberal states and cities. Just imagine that they did that, right? Like I think that they would be this is one of those moments where it's super hypocritical. I don't think that they would handle that. They would be angry about that. Trump wrote on Truth Social Thursday, they will serve as special envoys to me for the purpose of bringing Hollywood, which has lost much business over the last 4 years to foreign countries, back bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. These three very talented people will be in my eyes and ears, and I will get done what they suggest. It will be it's so hard to read a transcript of what he says because he talks like a 6-year-old. Or okay, sorry, he talks like a 6th grader. That's maybe more appropriate. It will it actually I feel like is easier to read when I do it in the accent. So I'm gonna start all this over in the accent. They will serve as special envoys to me for the purpose of bringing Hollywood, which has lost much business over the last 4 years to foreign countries, back, bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. These three very talented people will be my eyes and ears, and I will get done what they suggest. It will again be like the United States of America itself, the golden age of Hollywood. So stupid. It appears that the newly appointed ambassadors had little advance notice on the news, as Gibson said he found out at the same time as Trump's social media followers. That is so funny. It'd be hilarious if he didn't even ask him permission or like, is it cool if do you guys, hey, do you want to be an ambassador? It'd be hilarious if he never even asked them or mentioned it to them. He just sort of is just like unilaterally like, all right, I guess I'm going to make Mel Gibson an ambassador. See how he feels about this. I'm sure he mentioned it to them, like, but it'd be really. It's funny to think about that he just didn't say anything. I got the tweet at the same time as all of you and was just as surprised. Nevertheless, I heed the call. My duty as a citizen is to give any help and insight I can. Okay, so maybe he was just like, you're gonna be ambassador, and Mel Gibson's like, what? That would be really. That's so funny to think about. Gibson said in a statement to Variety, "Any chance the position comes with an ambassador's residence?" Question mark. Trump's announcement comes 4 days before his inauguration in Washington, D.C., and as wildfires have destroyed thousands of homes and buildings in southern Los Angeles. Many businesses are struggling to recover, and the cost is estimated to be around $250 billion. The domestic box office in 2024 was also down from the year prior, as the Hollywood release calendar took a hit from the 2023 actors and writers strike. Last year's revenues were 8.7 billion, down 3.3% from 2023 and 23.5% from 2019, the last pre-pandemic year which reached 11.3 billion. A 25% is crazy. A 25% reduction since 2019 pre-pandemic in movie theater attendance and revenues. Stallone, it's probably even less than that in movie theater attendance considering how much they've raised their prices. Stallone, Gibson, and Voight have been vocal Trump supporters in recent years. Stallone introduced the president-elect at a Mar-a-Lago gala in November. Sylvester Stallone, the one that's like in Russia, like LARPing as a soldier. I'll look that up in a second. Hold on, no, I'm gonna look that up right now. Oh, it's Steven Seagal. That's the weirdo in Russia pretending to be a soldier. Okay. Similar name. Stallone introduced the president-elect at a Mar-a-Lago gala in November, calling him the second George Washington. Gibson voiced his support for Trump and slammed Kamala Harris's intelligence ahead of a 2024 election, and Voight spoke in depth about his admiration of Trump in a Variety cover story last year. Voight's a weird one because, like, he's been in some good movies, but he's also been in some really bad movies. And Mel Gibson comes off as a weirdo. Stallone comes off as a weirdo, but Voight, from what I've seen of him, he comes off as a bit more of a normal person. So it's a little bit, he's the most surprising of the bunch for me. After being blacklisted from Hollywood for years after anti-Semitic comments, Gibson returned by directing the Oscar-winning film Hacksaw Ridge in 2016 and has an upcoming action movie, Flight Risk, starring Mark Wahlberg, out on January 24th. Stallone has recently starred in Paramount Plus drama Tulsa King and co-wrote and produced the upcoming Jason Statham action movie Working Man. Voight most recently appeared in Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis and the biopic Reagan starring Dennis Quaid as President Ronald Reagan. If you're an actor in 2025 with any self-respect, why would you work with Mel Gibson? He doesn't make good movies. I know he's an accredited director, that doesn't mean he's a good director, right? I haven't seen Braveheart, and I know that's like an accredited film or whatever, and people talk about that one a lot. But like all the other movies I've seen by him are terrible. Hacksaw Ridge is not a good movie. I don't know how that won an Oscar. Hacksaw Ridge won an Oscar? What for? How? That is not a good movie. Like, why? He makes almost exclusively bad movies. Why would anybody still work with him? He seems like one of those guys who I feel like should have just faded into obscurity, especially after some weird I haven't seen, I don't know exactly what those anti-Semitic comments are, but it seems consistent with this whole Passion of the Christ stuff that he would be some weird Christian anti-Semitic dude. That doesn't seem surprising to me. I don't know. It seems surprising to me that any self-respecting actor still works with him and that he's still like is popular and still is making movies and people still care. He's still relevant. He's still in the popular zeitgeist. How's that possible? Freaking Mel Gibson, the guy they made From on South. Oh, my nipples! They hurt when I twist them. The South Park Earl. Insert South Park clip here.
And being that we are all big Mel Gibson film fans, we thought maybe you could help us. Ah, my nipples, they hurt! They hurt when I twist them! Yes,
Oh, my nipples! They hurt when I twist them. I would love to see Mel Gibson's reaction to South Park. He seems like the exact kind of person where like 96% of people would take it as like funny. They'd be like, haha, they'd almost see it as flattering that South Park is parodying them. But he seems like the exact kind of person that would take it personally, like is unable to find that kind of thing funny. And it's like, I don't know if this is the case, but it would not surprise me one bit if he was like that narcissistic and self-centered that like he can't laugh at himself basically, and that he still has a grudge against Matt and Trey from South Park for depicting him in a less than good light. Alrighty, let's move on from this. White House eyes big cuts to DOL funding, Department of Labor. The White House wants to lop off more than one-third of the Labor Department's funding, according to a budget document submitted to Congress on Friday. The skinny budget proposal, so named because it lacks much of the granular specificity integral to actually allocating money for the federal government. That's a really funny sentence. Would shrink DOL's discretionary budget from its current 3.3 billion to 8.6 billion for next fiscal year. Your host reported for pro subscribers. This is a really funny opening sentence. So named because it lacks much of the granular specificity integral to actually allocating money for the federal government. Basically, this is a really lazy, slappy proposal that has no specifics and just cuts money. Yeah, that seems about right for this administration. The bulk of that reduction would come from two areas: overhauling DOL's grant programs and eliminating the Job Corps, the latter of which the Trump administration argues is a failed program despite long-standing bipartisan support. What is the Job Corps? Job Corps is a U.S. government program that provides free career training and education to young people aged 16 to 24, primarily those from low-income backgrounds. It's a residential program where students live and learn in a supportive environment, gaining skills and knowledge for a variety of in-demand industries. The program offers a path to both completing high school and acquiring vocational skills, ultimately helping graduates transition into the workforce, higher education, or the military. That all seems great. That seems the exact kind of thing we need more of in the United States. What? It's so frustrating, this administration. You can almost work backwards. You can almost say anything, like you would hope that they would go, what's something, let's identify a problem and then identify a good thing we can do to fix that problem and then do that. I feel like they're coming at it from the exact opposite. Let's identify something good the government is doing. Let's identify a way that we can destroy it, and then let's do that. Like they're working, and I'm sure this isn't literally what they're doing. Maybe, I sure hope not. But like it sure feels like what they're doing. The practical difference between them doing that and what they're doing now, I don't know if there would really be any practical difference. The bulk of that reduction would come from two areas: overhauling DOL's grant programs and eliminating the Job Corps, the latter of which the Trump administration argues is a failed program despite long-standing bipartisan support. There are 4.2 million young Americans aged 16 to 24 who are neither in work nor school and who often have few options to successfully gain the skills needed for gainful employment, particularly in rural communities. That is 100% correct. Basically the poorer you are, the more rural you are, the more difficult it is to get access to like higher education, to college, to vocational training, to trade school, to build the skills and invest in yourself in a way that like pays off in the future to where you can have a more lucrative, more fulfilling, more self-sustaining future. Um, this seems like an excellent program. It seems important. The budget document would also slice 1.6 billion. Sorry, let me go back a second. The department published a transparency report highlighting performance metrics and pre-enrollees cost of the program, among other data. Budget document would also slice 1.6 billion from DOL grants and roll up what remains into what it's calling Make America Skilled Again grants. President Trump's first budget proposal reaffirms his unwavering commitment to putting American workers first, encouraging and empowering states to upskill their workers by expanding apprenticeship opportunities, Labor Secretary Lori Chavez de Rimmer said in a statement. I can't the first thing my mind goes to when I read a statement like this is I can't help but think the private-public dynamic here, and that they fundamentally are against the government doing anything, and that to the extent that they acknowledge that this is a good and important and useful program within a societal context, they wanna shift it from being a public thing to a private thing, and that's what I would suppose that's what I'm speculating, that's what they mean by encouraging and empowering states to upskill their workers by expanding apprenticeship opportunities. Apprenticeship opportunities, I'm assuming, means a private internship sort of situation, not a publicly funded training program. They want to shift they want you to to take maximal to go maximally cynical on this. They want the capitalist machine needs meat for the grinder, and they know that, and they the less public money involved, the easier it is to get them into this meat grinder pipeline, which is inherently a private one. Congress historically has treated the president's blueprint as, at best, a loose suggestion as it hammers out its own appropriations deal, but the Trump administration has been keen on testing that dynamic when it comes to spending. Outside of the Department of Labor, the White House is also seeking to kill the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service, an independent agency that is central to Senator John Hawley's union contract bill, as well as the Institute of Museum and Library Services, which is being overseen by Deputy Labor Secretary Keith Sonderling. It is also mistakenly referred to as IMLS, as the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences. So this article didn't really have a ton of information. Basically, they're just looking at some cuts, um, and that they the skinny budget proposal. I guess they only have a skinny budget proposal, and I'm gonna read it one more time. So named because it lacks much of the granular specificity integral to actually allocating money for the federal government. Basically, this is a really sloppily put together bill that just cuts money blindly without much specificity or thought or reasoning. Hopefully this doesn't happen because it seems like I didn't really know much about I maybe had heard of it before, but maybe I didn't even hear of it before this article, but the National Job Corps seems like a pretty good program, one of the exact kind of programs we want to keep. And based on the report, I clicked on the transparency report. It was pretty complicated. It was an Excel spreadsheet, but it basically laid out that it was a statistical breakdown of the financial effectiveness of the program, basically the costs in and how the people that graduate from the program and the people that go through the program, the benefits that they see versus those that don't go through the program, and that based on the input costs and the output results, it's overall a very lucrative program. All right, let's read this article. Senators unveil bipartisan plan to lower drug costs. It comes as some Republicans are working to insert a similar proposal into their party line agenda package. Senators Josh Hawley and Peter Welch are teaming up on bipartisan legislation aimed at lowering drug costs by barring drug companies in the U.S. from charging higher prices than the international average. Hmm. I, so in theory, on like a really surface level analysis, that sounds good. Okay. The one place I'm skeptical is that a large p- part of why international averages are lower than what we pay is because we essentially um, we subsidize international drug costs. So if we were to say we pay 50% more for all drugs. I know it varies significantly from drug to drug, but let's say we pay 50% for all drugs across the board. And just to make this example easy, then um, if we were to implement a law saying that we have to bring it down to an international average, which would cut our drug costs by 50% and bring it down to the international average, I would imagine that that international average would necessarily rise, and that while we probably would see a reduction in the overall cost, it wouldn't be a full 50% because we are subsidizing the international average drug cost, and that if we no longer are subsidizing it in that kind of way by paying higher prices, then necessarily the average price of everybody else is paying is going to have to go up, which still is overall good for us. Um, but it is not as it's not as clear cut as like we, it's more complicated than it might seem. It's not just we implement a rule to say you have to give us the average price and that's that. There's more analysis to it than that. While their bill is different from what the Trump administration is proposing to help finance the GOP's mega bill of tax cuts and extensions, border security investments, and more, it underscores the cross party and populist interest in cracking down on pharmaceutical companies. The White House is pushing a proposal to reduce spending in Medicaid by aligning what the safety net program pays for drugs with the lower prices paid abroad. In a statement shared first with Politico, Hawley, a Missouri Republican, tied the bipartisan legislation to President Donald Trump's efforts during his first term to link drug prices in the United States to those in other high income nations. This bipartisan legislation would continue to work to end a drug market that favors big pharma, make prescriptions affordable again, and empower Americans to get the care they need, Hawley said. Where congressional Republicans ultimately end up on drug pricing as part of their yet to be finalized policy package remains to be seen. While the White House is pushing what it is calling a most favored nation plan, Speaker Mike Johnson poured cold water on the idea during an interview last week. Howley, meanwhile, is a key vote to watch on the Republicans' sweeping party line bill. And as part of the Senate's debate on that measure, lawmakers will be able to offer unlimited amendments on nearly any proposal. He said that if Republicans want to save money on healthcare costs and reconciliation, this is where to start. Wait, see, let me see it again. Let me read this paragraph again. Howley, meanwhile, is a key vote to watch on the Republican sweeping party line bill as part of the Senate's debate on the measure, lawmakers will be able to offer unlimited amendments on nearly any proposal. He said that if Republicans want to save money on healthcare costs and reconciliation, this is where to start. Okay. So basically, they're creating this mega bill, and that he's basically like, you guys want to pile in the pork, you guys want to pile in the bad stuff that you can't like get passed through as an individual bill. Now's your chance, like Medicare cuts, right? Medicare cuts, I don't think they could actually get through as a raw bill through the Senate or the House. Maybe. My gut tells me no. But if they sneak it into a much larger bill that has tax cuts and all this other nonsense, it's much harder, much easier for them to sneak it through, much harder for them to stop the whole bill as a result of this one thing. So he's basically saying, use this is an opportunity, guys, use it. Cynically, he's Howley's a hardcore conservative Republican from Missouri. So like, I'm not saying this is like a he's doing a good thing, but he's saying to his teammates, guys, this is a good opportunity. In addition to prohibiting pharmaceutical companies from selling drugs within the United States at a higher price than the international average, it would also impose a penalty if companies violate the prohibition. Big Pharma's price gouging has made that a reality for many Americans, forcing them to pay 4 to 5 times more for the same life saving medications as folks in other countries. It's unacceptable, said Welch, a Vermont Democrat. The legislation would go after the list price of drugs, but most Americans don't pay the list price when getting prescriptions filled. That's because health insurers and pharmacy benefit managers are able to negotiate lower costs. The pharmaceutical industry is expected to fiercely oppose such a move, having previously argued that so called international reference pricing and other similar government price controls would lead to significant barriers to accessing treatment for patients, including longer wait times for medications. That's also possible. A possible result of this, besides a market correction, international market correction, like I mentioned, where the international average price goes up if we were to implement something like this, there is also the possibility that there are various mechanisms by which this could create shortages. Um, and like it said, create people have to go without or have to wait for medications. The Congressional Budget Office found last year that an international reference pricing policy based on prices in several other high-income countries, including Canada, France, and the United Kingdom, would reduce average drug prices in 2031 by more than 5%. It's not as much as I would expect. 5%. I mean, that's significant, certainly, but and it's not targeted. So I wonder how they calculate that 5%, because obviously there's so many different drugs that would be affected by this. And people take drugs at different rates. There's a whole lot more people taking Ozempic, for instance, than there are people taking some super rare genetic disorder, disease that 100 people have or something. So I would speculate that if they were to do this as the way they're describing, it probably would be a good thing, but it might not be an explicitly good thing. And I think there is a more complicated, nuanced discussion to be had about this, and I think the way that it's implemented would be pretty important. I can see some ways this could go bad, or some ways that there could be some unintended or just bad side effects, and those need to be addressed for this to work properly. Alrighty, let's move on. The GOP's tax cut mega bill isn't the only one of President Donald Trump's priorities in jeopardy on Capitol Hill. Republicans have an unexpected crypto problem too. Crypto turmoil is unfolding in the Senate after 9 key Democrats, led by Senator Ruben Gallego, said this weekend that they would oppose GOP-led legislation that would carve out new rules for so-called stablecoins. The Democrats' surprise shift is an urgent problem for Senate Republicans, who are trying to expedite a floor vote on the bill by late May to give Trump a big, beautiful crypto bill to sign soon. Why does it matter? The crypto fight is one of the first major tests of Republicans' ability to work across the aisle in the second Trump era. Unlike budget reconciliation, GOP senators need Democrats to overcome a Senate filibuster. It's also a big test for Democrats, who have long been deeply divided over the risks and rewards of cryptocurrency trading. Senator Elizabeth Warren is trying to stop her colleagues from following the lead of Senators Kirsten Gillibrand, the stablecoin bill's lead Democrat co-sponsor. It comes after the crypto industry grew its influence by dumping tens of millions of dollars into congressional races last year. I c- What went wrong? The 9 Senate Democrats, including 4 who backed an earlier version of the bill in committee in March, blasted changes that Republicans made in the last several days and said the latest proposal would allow stablecoins to pose too many risks to the financial system. Among the Democrats who signed on, Senators Mark Warner, Lisa Blunt Rochester, and Andy Kim. Andy Kim. Several Democratic senators raised concerns at a closed door caucus meeting last Thursday about advancing an industry backed crypto bill as the Trump family tries to build its own crypto empire. Senate Majority Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer urged Democrats not to commit to supporting the stablecoin bill, saying they should use their leverage to force additional changes to the legislation. Hold on, let me see what this is about. Build its own crypto empire. Is it just talking about the Trump family is cashing in on crypto? It's creating problems for Congress. So this was uploaded a little over a month ago. The Trump family's latest cryptocurrency business venture could jeopardize bipartisan support for a GOP effort to lightly regulate the digital assets industry. Republican lawmakers need Democratic votes to pass long promised crypto legislation that they are rushing to send to President Donald Trump's desk. But a company started by Trump's eldest sons announced last week that it would launch a new digital coin, a move that could make it harder to get additional Democrats on board. World Liberty Financial's new stablecoin, a token pegged to the US dollar, could allow Trump family members to profit off the GOP led legislation that would help legitimize the assets and enact industry friendly rules for how they are overseen by regulators. Wait, say this again. World Liberty Financial's new stablecoin, token pegged to the US dollar, could allow Trump family members to profit off the GOP led legislation that would help legitimize the assets and enact industry friendly rules for how they are overseen by regulators. Bro, this is an absurd conflict of interest. Literally, Trump, his sons have a freaking crypto thing they just started on top of the whole Trump coin that he did during the campaign, the scam coin that he did. This is so cynical, and this is so like this is such a tremendous conflict of interest. Just imagine for half a second, Biden wanted to when Biden was in office wanting to do some sort of like pro stable coin uh bill. Oh, but conveniently the week before Hunter Biden started his own stablecoin business that would very much benefit like humongously. Like he would probably make hundreds of millions of dollars from the passing of that bill. Republicans and conservatives would lose their minds, okay? Like why there is not an uproar on the Republican conservative side about this insane conflict of interest and this insane like cynical cash grab. Like there is no reasonable defense for this. This is clearly just like to get him, his family, and his buddies as much like to allow them to make as much money as possible, and the fact that they are referencing, the bill they wanna make, the bill that they wanna push forward is too financially risky and could, like, be a problem for the economy, shows that they really just want to enrich themselves at the expense of everything else, bar none. They don't care if it crashes the economy. If they come out on top, they're happy about it. It's disaster capitalism, right? The wealthy and those that curate the disasters and in recessions and depressions and whatnot often are those that actually benefit significantly. Their wealth goes up significantly in those time periods because those are opportune moments to consolidate wealth, consolidate assets. There's a restructuring of values of certain things. I just don't understand how there isn't uproar about this on the Republican conservative side. This insane conflict of interest. But I think me hoping and expecting there to be any semblance of like integrity from the Republicans and conservatives at this point is just naive and wishful thinking at this point. I really want it to be, and I'm going to continue to point out the hypocrisy. But they have firmly established at this point that nobody should reasonably expect them to do any of these things that make them hypocritical, because they're not coming at this from a good faith perspective. They're coming at this from a I'm trying to make me and my homies as much money as possible, bar none perspective. Several Democrats in both chambers already support GOP led stablecoin bills, but the Trump factor is poised to become a hitch. In the House, the ranking member of the Financial Services Panel, Representative Maxine Waters of California, is expected to oppose the legislation at a committee vote this week if it does not include language that would block Donald Trump and Elon Musk from issuing stablecoins, according to a Democratic aide with knowledge of the matter, granted anonymity to discuss the decisions not yet made public. I think that is genius and perfect. Yes, absolutely. Because by doing this, you are making them acknowledge the hypocrisy and the rank corruption of having Donald Trump advocate for a stablecoin bill at the same time him and he already made one and his sons are making one like a week ago. Okay, and Elon Musk. I that seems totally fine to me. I think that is not only a practically legitimate, like smart provision to add to the bill, but it's also like politically astute because, like I said, you're forcing them to acknowledge the hypocrisy of not putting that in the bill, of allowing Trump and Elon and those and John Jr. or whatever to have their own stable coins, very conveniently released a week before they do this whole pro stablecoin bill sort of thing. Democrats involved in crypto talks on Capitol Hill say the stablecoin announcement from the Trump family crypto firm is a detriment to their legislative efforts. I can't think of anything quite so damaging to bipartisanship than that happening, said Representative Himes, a senior Connecticut Democrat in the House Financial Services Committee, who has backed stablecoin legislation in the past and said he hopes to again this week. The concerns illustrate the challenges of achieving bipartisanship in the Trump era, even on an issue that lawmakers on both sides have gotten behind as the industry's Washington influence has grown. It also highlights how Trump and his family's embrace of crypto have come with some downsides for Republican lawmakers who are working to legislate on the issue. Even some of the industry's most ardent supporters in Congress are acknowledging that World Liberty's latest move could become an obstacle in talks with Democrats. It shouldn't make life harder, but it might, said Cynthia Loomis, a Wyoming Republican who has played a leading role in crafting the legislation aimed at boosting the crypto sector. What do you mean it might? Girl, do you not care at all? No, she doesn't. Maybe she does care about the corruption and the conflict of interest, and probably would, maybe in a personal setting, acknowledge that it's not good. But maybe I cannot help but think there are so many Republicans that maybe have some semblance of like they aren't complete morons, but they understand they're in the it really isn't the Republican Party anymore. It's the MAGA party, and that they have to kiss Trump's ass, and that anything that opposes him, they will be made an outsider, an enemy, and that they can't risk that for their reelection, their their electoral interests. And so um it's just so frustrating to see her, like, downplay or suggest that there it might not be a problem, that there's no conflict of interest or whatever. Like, it's just so, like, it's so gross. The legislation has garnered bipartisan support, teeing it up to become the first major crypto reform ever passed by Congress. At least 3 Democrats are already supporters in the House, but concerns from Waters, a longtime Trump foe and critic of the president's crypto business ventures, could imperil broader support from her side of the aisle. A spokesperson for House Financial Services Republicans Brooke Nethercott said in a statement that the panel looks forward to continuing our work on stablecoins. If we want clear standards in this market, the status quo is not the answer, she said. Several members on both sides of the aisle have been working to provide clear regulatory guidelines to allow payment stable coins to flourish in the United States. In the United States, it remains unlikely that the concerns over the Trump's new stablecoin will jeopardize Republicans' ultimate ability to pass crypto legislation. Democrats have expressed concerns about Trump's past moves on crypto, but have gone on to vote for industry-friendly legislation anyway. Supporters of the effort in the party say new light touch rules are needed for digital assets, even as the Trump family could benefit from the regulatory changes. The bipartisan support for crypto, despite the trumpet controversies, is a sign of the industry's growing political clout in Washington, where it has spent hundreds of millions of dollars in recent years to lobby and boost candidates who support its cause. Crypto is all just one giant big, like, scam Ponzi scheme. That's a huge oversimplification, but like the moneyed interests that are in Washington, like lobbying for more crypto friendly legislation, are not doing so from an altruistic belief in the power and the novel ability of, like, blockchain or whatever. That is absolutely not why they are investing this money into Washington. They are doing it because it is lucrative, because it is a giant fucking Ponzi scheme, because those already holding large amounts of these assets, if they legitimize it and the assets accrue in value significantly, they can dump it. Classic pump and dump, but they're using the fucking government as the mechanism to pump. And also, I don't know if it's a good thing for us to make crypto a prevalent way of paying for goods and services in the United States. I worry to the extent that it could undermine the dollar's legitimacy. And I understand that the dollar's legitimacy ultimately comes from the fact that the US government only allows you to pay taxes in US dollars. And so as long as you are only allowed to pay taxes in US dollars and you'll never be allowed to pay it in crypto, which I don't imagine they'll do, then the US dollar will to some degree always be uh hegemonic. It will always be the king. But that doesn't mean that it's like that doesn't mean that it's immune to the influences of like a more fleshed out stablecoin payment system in the United States. And I worry that we're going to have scenarios in which like I'm worried that we're going to have a future in which basically like you have to have a crypto wallet. That you not only have to have the ability to pay in cash, but that you basically have to have the ability to pay in crypto because like businesses are like, "Oh, we'll give you 20% off if you pay in crypto instead or whatever." And so then you're basically forced to pay crypto, otherwise you're gonna pay an extra like, you're paying more than other people. I don't know, I really don't like the idea of, like, us having to do crypto. It's sort of like how the credit score industry didn't always exist, right? It used to not exist. But now that the credit score industry is such a prevalent part of society, you basically have to acknowledge it, right? You have to get a credit card to build your credit. You have to acknowledge the credit score system. You can't just be like, I don't care, I'm not going to acknowledge it. I don't care if I have a bad credit score. I'm just going to live my life. That will cause problems. It's almost the exact same thing. Yeah, it's almost the exact same thing in that, like, I worry the cat's gonna be let out of the bag with regards to the crypto payments and wallets being a prevalent part of our, our society, and that we're gonna get to a point where you have to acknowledge it, where you have to have the crypto wallet, where you have to not only, it's just another thing to pile on top of our modern society, all the stuff, all the BS we have to worry about and do that we wouldn't have in the past. You need the regulation regardless, but it's certainly not helpful, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand said of the Trump company stablecoin launch. The New York Democrat helped write a stablecoin bill that is awaiting a Senate floor vote. It makes something that's a very serious financial payment system into something that seems non serious, she said. I don't know how could you possibly differentiate between them doing this as like they think it's a good bill and just a byproduct is Trump enriching him and his family through this stablecoin thing, or the whole point of it being him enriching him and his family, and that just a byproduct is the like more regulation of the market and these other things that are actually in the bill. I would argue it's almost impossible to distinguish which one it is. And based on everything this administration has done over the last however many years, it makes me want to lean towards the latter, that this is really a bill in service to try and enrich him and his family and his friends, and that the byproduct is whatever the bill happens to have, not they're trying to pass a bill and the byproduct is him enriching him and his family. I can't help but think that it's impossible to parse out which one is which, and it's almost impossible. And I think there is you could make a very good case that it's the cynical one. Trump aligned Republicans are brushing off the concerns. I don't think it's a problem, said Brian Donalds, an ally of the president who sits on House Financial Services. There is no conceivable way he would be saying the same thing if the tables were turned and it was Biden and Hunter Biden creating a crypto stable coin and trying to do all this. There is no conceivable way. I would bet my entire life that he would not hold the same position, that he would be going hard against Biden. Oh, look at this corruption. Oh, look at this conflict of interest. Oh, he's just trying to enrich his family. Oh, blah, 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 corruption. I guarantee you he would be saying this. There's absolutely no way. I would bet my life that there's no way he would give this defense for Biden if the shoe was turned. Like the double, I know I spend so much time talking about hypocrisy and double standard when it comes to conservatives and Republicans, but like that I think is one of the defining factors of the modern Republican Party is hypocrisy. That they have a humongous double standard between the ways that they hold their own representatives, their own team members, and how they look at the other side. And I think it's because they come at it from a team perspective. You see some Democrats that do this as well, but I think it's much, much more prevalent on the Republicans that they aren't coming at this from a good faith. We're trying to find the best solution in the middle of all of us. Um, you know, uh, Taking in everybody's input and logic and statistics and facts. They're coming at it from the perspective of a team sport. They've picked a side. They think that's right. Statistics, facts, negotiating, humanist tendencies or empathy be damned, all of that. It is a team sport in that sense anything goes so far as it pushes your team forward and pushes the other team down. Asked if he was concerned about the World Liberty stablecoin on Wednesday, Republican Brian Steyer, the lead sponsor of the House bill being marked up this week, told reporters that Republicans are focused in on the legislation that's been drafted. Yeah, okay, yeah. World Liberty's stablecoin called USD1 will be pegged to the value of the dollar and backed by short-term US government treasuries, US dollar deposits, and other cash equivalents. Oh no, that's such a bad idea. No, that's such a bad idea. Why would we why would we back why would we back a why would we back a crypto coin like that? Why? I can only see negatives coming from this. What are the benefits from this? I can see a couple of dudes enriching themselves as a benefit of this, but I can only see systemic negatives. I can't see any systemic positives from this. I can only see this causing a devaluation of the dollar or a reduction in the hegemony of the US dollar in the national, in world markets and whatever. Like I this seems like the economist part of my brain is the bells are ringing because this screams bad idea to me. According to an announcement from the company posted on Medium, the firm also sells a separate crypto token called WLFIA. A representative for the company did not respond to a request for comment for the story. U.S. stablecoin issuers have long lobbied for legislation that would clarify how dollar-pegged tokens are regulated, and they could benefit from a bill that gives the industry a new stamp of legitimacy. The legislation under consideration would put in place new rules outlining which regulators oversee stablecoin issuers and the types of reserves the companies are required to hold. Speaking at a major crypto conference in Washington on Wednesday, a World Liberty co-founder, Zach Witkoff, said the firm expects the market capitalization of stablecoins to be many trillions of dollars in the next few years. We view stablecoins as an integral part of not only crypto, but the entire financial system, said Witkoff, whose father, Steve Witkoff, is Trump's special envoy to the Middle East. But crypto itself is inherently nothing. It's inherently nothing, right? Like it is a fake currency that doesn't have any like ties to the government, and to the extent that this coin would have a tie to the government, it's only in a backing sense. It's not actually the USD. What is with people? It is so sickening to me that something that is so obviously a giant scam, a way to transfer money from poor gullible idiots to rich, cunning bag holders. It seems so clear to me that that is what overall the crypto industry is, and that people have just been blinded by like, yeah, a blockchain is an interesting technology that might have some real applications, but like if you are letting your liking of blockchain technology and your belief in its power to potentially do good things in the future blind you to all of the other problems with crypto or the real life practicalities or the fact that it's just a big fucking Ponzi scheme is so stupid. And I can't I it's I'm gonna say I would say I can't believe the whole Republican Party has been captured by this, but like it doesn't actually surprise me that they've been captured by it. But it's so gross and so cynical and so, I think, potentially problematic. This is the sort of thing that could potentially crash the United States economy. And, like, I know that's an extremely low chance. Like, we're probably talking less than 1% that it would actually turn out like that. But, like, if 10 years from now, through some convoluted series of events, ultimately stemming from this, that the US economy crashed or the US dollar crashed or the US dollar becomes not the main trading currency in the world, I wouldn't be terribly surprised. I'd go like, "Oh, I kinda called that. I kinda called that 10 years ago a little bit." Like, I saw that coming a little bit. He appeared on stage at the conference hosted by a crypto trade association called the Digital Chamber, alongside some of the project's other co-founders, Zach Folkman, Chase Harrow, and Donald Trump Jr., leading pro-crypto lawmakers, including House Financial Services Chair Fresh Hill and Senate Banking Chair Tim Scott, also spoke on separate panels at the event. Donald Trump Jr. said on the panel he was motivated to get into crypto after discovering how discriminatory the traditional financial system is towards conservatives. The sky's the limit for this. Bro, no. No, that's insane. Bro, they're actually trying to take victimhood mentality with the financial services. Bro, the fact that you are bad at investing in the stock market does not mean that that the market is discriminatory towards you. That is straight up borderline schizophrenia right there. That he's arguing that the traditional financial system is biased towards conservatives. Are you smoking crack? Knowing Donald Trump Jr., he might actually be smoking crack. But like, oh, it's so cynical. It's so obvious what they're doing. It's so obvious that they're all just trying to make a bag. They're all trying to just make their money. They don't care about any of this. And anybody who doesn't see that, I just like I want to know what you do see and why you see it that way. And like I would argue that it's very likely what you're seeing is you're something's based on something wrong, okay? You're coming at this wrong because this is just like this whole everything involving Trump and crypto and all of this and stablecoin legislation and all of this is just like the pure corruption, pure conflict of interest. And I don't understand how that isn't the main point of conversation about this, right? I have a feeling the Democrats are like terrified at the idea of voting against this kind of piece of legislation lest they be seen as like the old party who doesn't want to move forward and yada yada. And the Republicans have been trying to change that narrative and have been somewhat successful in doing so. And the Democrats are aware of this. And so I think they really, really, for like political bad optics reasons, want to um want to pass some sort of crypto related bill, and that I'm so worried that they're going to overlook the ridiculous conflicts of interest here and the rank corruption, and are going to do it because they think it's good for their electoral chances or whatever in the future. Like, knowing the Democrats, that's exactly what they're gonna fucking do. They're gonna have a couple of people performatively be against it, and then when the rubber meets the road, they're all just gonna bend the knee. I think that's good enough for today. It has been May 5th, 2025. I am Michael Winkler, and this has been the Mike Wink Show. Peace out, y'all.